Good evening. Hello. That was our expertly well-produced introduction to the latest episode. God, it's Sean Connery on the hosting tonight. I told you this was going to go badly. Welcome to the latest episode of the Third and Short podcast, Overtime. Tonight we'll be breaking down the NFC South. I'm joined by two of our regulars. To my left, I have the Geordie preacher, Mark Cart, or Mark Steele, as his real name is. And in the bottom left corner, we have Bones of the Poverty Franchises. But also joining us tonight as a late replacement for Jordan is our good friend and basically producer of the main podcast, Jamie Crawford. And we've lost Bones. So this is going really well so far.
I leave for a few weeks. I come back and nobody knows what's going on. How are you doing, Bones? Are you okay? Are you alive now?
Bones, are you good?
Well, we can't hear you, Bones.
You can hear us, we can't hear him.
Because I'm going to talk a lot about the Bucs tonight. So you can just chill in the background.
Come to that. Well, it's all right. Let's cover for Bones as quickly as we can. Right, so NFC South, as we know, four pretty good sides, I would say. The Buccaneers, the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Saints. What we've usually done at the top of these episodes is sort of asked, what does the division sort of mean to you? What signifies the division as you look at it? So I'll start with you, Mark. What do you think of when you hear the NFC South mentioned?
Recently, honestly, the first word that springs to mind when I think NFC South, I think of Sean McVay and Drew Brees. Obviously, this league has been relatively dominated by the Saints in recent years, although obviously they produced the Super Bowl champions last year. But over, I would say, probably the last 10 years, this has been the Saints division to lose. I would say it's creative. It's quite high-powered. I mean, when I think of the coordinators here, obviously, you've got Sean Payton, who's a head coach of the Saints, who's an offensive-minded coach. You've got Matt Rule, who's the head coach at the Carolina Panthers, who I'm doing, and he's an offensive-minded coach. You've got Bruce Arians, who's at Tampa Bay, and of course, he's an offensive-minded coach. And now we also have an offensive-minded coach at, the Falcons. So you've got three teams here which are led by offensive-minded coaches, which should mean that this league should be explosive. It should be pass-happy. The weather's favourable. Some teams play in a dome. So, it's really facilitated to throw the ball down the field. And the quarterbacks it's produced have kind of done that. We're thinking in recent memory of Jameis Winston. You know what I mean? Who was as guilty as throwing as many touchdowns as he was interceptions. But he was a high-powered offense. He was running a high-powered down-the-field offense. Same with Drew Brees. At the Saints, more conservative, but a pass-heavy offense. Death by paper cut, some would say. And the Falcons, of course, have had Matt Ryan, and again, likewise, he's a perennial top 15 quarterback kind of thing. He's been an MVP in the past, so it's got some good quarterbacks in this division, and of course now it's got one of who many would argue is the greatest quarterback of all. Tom Brady is in this division. So yeah, it's built on offense. It's built on high-powered football. It's been the Saints over the last 10 years, but now Tampa obviously winning the Super Bowl, coming back as the defending champions. Not of the division though. They went in on the wild card, so they didn't. You've got to remember that although they won the Super Bowl last year, they didn't win this division. It was the Saints again who won this division. And I know that Jamie will be wanting Tampa not only to win the Super Bowl again, which you've got a great chance of bringing the full team back, but also to win this division. When was the last time you won this division, Jamie?
I want to say a very long time ago. I'm going to say
maybe under Gruden when you won the Super Bowl. Maybe
I reckon it'd be Gruden.
I was going to say it's 2002, like when we won the Super Bowl. That's what I'm pretty sure. We made the playoffs under Winston in his second year in 2015, but again, I think that was a wild card.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's funny. Like, to me, the NFC South has always been, well, certainly when I started watching football, I started watching it in 2005, and it was a very sort of run-heavy division back then. You had the Falcons with Vic and Dunn and TJ Duckett and people like that. You had Tampa, who obviously with Gruden were a little bit more pass-happy, but they had people like Cadillac Williams in the backfield and things like that. The Panthers, it was like Stephen Davis and D'Angelo Williams and the other guy who I forgot the name of. And it wasn't a pass-heavy league because the quarterbacks really didn't stand out. I'm struggling to think. All right, Vic, you could argue, became a good quarterback in his later years, but he wasn't a good passer back in those days. Tampa, as with most John Gruden teams, were changing quarterback every year, so there was never really a top guy. The Saints never really had that franchise guy, and like Carolina, Jake Delhomme, never really good enough, And then it all sort of changed when Drew Brees came to the Saints, and ever since then, it's kind of been an arms race of a division, I think. Teams have sort of leveled up to try and take on the Saints, the Bucs have now got Brady. Carolina are still kind of looking for their guy, but you can sense that they're taking strikes at it, which is more than most teams do. And obviously the Falcons have not only had Matt Ryan, but they've had some of the more high-powered offenses because of having Julio Jones and Kyle Shanahan, I guess, over the last few years. So it's kind of shifted for me over the years, from what it used to be to a slightly more wide open division now. They're always fun games to watch. I feel like the interdivisional games are the big sort of deciders in this. I think that's the big reason the Saints won the division last year. They were able to perform well in the divisional games. The Bucs didn't really do that. They didn't lose by a lot, but it doesn't matter. You have to win those games to win the division, I guess. So I think Bones has got his audio back. So what about you, Bones? What do you think about the NFC South?
Well, I guess it's hard. Well, you guys have summarized it pretty well so far. I think, like you say now, at this point in time, it is a very pass-heavy division. It's got, like you say, it's got two really good quarterbacks. It had three really good quarterbacks, but it's not now got two really good quarterbacks. It's going to be an interesting one to watch, I think, because I think I'm going to get onto it when I do summarize the Falcons, but they're 100% like an offensive team, especially under Arthur Smith. He's just come over Shanahan tree again, I think. So it's he was the popular one in the off season for who was going to hire this guy as a head coach, and I think in general it's going to be an interesting division to watch. I think everyone's got something interesting to talk about this year in terms of what's going to happen. I think the Bucs returning champions is going to make it interesting to watch. Saints, they've lost Brees. What's going to happen with them? There's a lot to watch in this division, and it should be a good one.
I think that's a good summary as well. I think that's an excellent summary. What about you, Jamie? You're a fan of a team that is frequently in contention for this division. So what do you think?
Frequently in contention? We've been mainly bottom of this division for most of those 10 years. However, I'm going to argue, Saints, granted, like you said, they have won the division, but I know I've argued this several times. Over the last 10 years, every team in the NFC South has been to the Super Bowl, with two of them winning it. No division can say that. No other division has had every team in the Super Bowl in a 10-year span. So maybe back in the heydays of the 80s, but Steelers were smashing everyone, weren't they? But for me, it's very interesting because as a Buccaneers fan anyway, I'm used to us losing and everybody else being as good. Now we are the team to beat. So I'm looking at this in a completely different way. You've got, like I said, Matt Ryan's reliable. They've just got in the unicorn, Kyle Pitts. Saints, you never know. I'd love to see Winston do well, but, it's the Saints, and I absolutely hate Sean Payton. And then the Panthers are the team I hate the most, but I love Christian McCaffrey, but I hope he breaks his legs.
Wow. We're going there already.
But no, the Bucs. We might as well start, shall we? It's the Buccaneers, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll throw it to you.
We brought everybody back in the off season. It's the first time ever since God knows when, since the history of the NFL, that we've won the Super Bowl and we brought every single starter back. We finally got AB to re-sign, and everybody has returned to try and run it back this year. And we've got a strong chance to do so. Like I said, we've got Brady in arguably his prime. He's looking to break records. Obviously, Drew Brees is now retired. I think he's only a few hundred yards off beating the pass yard record, which he can do against New Orleans in week 4, basically, if he keeps going on the same average, because Brady is going to have to face New Orleans at the Gillette Stadium in week 4 or 5. And if he beats the Patriots, he's going to be one of the only quarterbacks to beat all 32 teams. So,
yeah, that's an interesting stat. Like, that's never really been because if you think about those franchise QBs, a lot of them have done their entire career in one place. So if they have left, they've done maybe 1 year somewhere else at the most. Brady is a bit of a freak in that respect. He's got himself what's he on, a 2-year deal with you guys, I think.
He had 2 years. It's been extended, so it's another 2 years. He signed another 1-year deal, so it's 2 years from this year. So 3 years since last. Yeah, which again, like, what, make him 47, 40, 48 nearly, and the man can play till he's 50. I don't mind. However, if we talk about the draft, we signed the man I wanted. All I said, I know round 1, you argued, was a little bit too soon. I think he is a round 1 quarterback. I don't understand how nobody sees this. He was a Heisman Trophy nominee. He had the most touchdowns and the second most yards in the whole of the season. And he broke numerous records. And somehow he dropped all the way down to the end of the second round. Am I missing something? I'm asking you, am I missing something with Kyle Trask? Because I think he is one of the best prospects to come out of college. He beat Zach Wilson's stats. He beat Mac Jones is the only one that beat him with yards, but he had the most touchdowns out of anybody else coming out of that college season.
I think where you got him was good value. I'll say that before anybody else. I think where you got him was good value. I think the way this draft was stacked up, he might have snuck into the first round if a team panicked. I had him down as like second, third. Late second, I thought, was a good spot for him. And to be honest, it's a good place for him to go. He's going to a guy, Arians can develop QBs. I have no doubt about that. He's made some look far better than they actually are. And, and now he's going to sit behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, probably for 2-3 years. I think he's good.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, it happened with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers sat down Brett Favre for 2 years, and he came in, and he's arguably the second greatest quarterback of all time.
Bones,
I know you're itching. I can see Bones itching. Come on.
I've not got much to say. I just think Trask is a product of his environment. I don't think he's going to be that good outside of the Gators. I think it's because of the system he's playing in that he looks so good, and the people he's got to throw to that he looks so good. I just don't think it's going to last in the NFL, and that's about it. Like, there's not
those
much more
players are hard to judge, though. That's the thing. Like, it's the same with Mac Jones, isn't it? He looked like a pretty surefire first-round pick, but he was also at a college team that is on the verge, basically, of being an NFL team in terms of talent with the amount of players they send to the league every year. So how do you evaluate that in terms of, like, he's battering teams, but he probably should be in the situation that he's in. It would be strange if he wasn't. So, yeah, I'm mixed on Trask. But I don't think it was a bad pick for the Buccaneers. In terms of what I thought of him as a prospect, that's probably 50-50.
No, I do want to clarify where they got him and what they're going to do with him. It is fine. Like, I don't necessarily think he's going to be the next great quarterback. Like, I just don't.
This is the thing with Trask as well. I know, like you said, he was in Florida. Florida aren't that great of a college team anymore. I think they used to be a lot bigger than what they are. He did have Kyle Pitts to throw to, and obviously Kyle Pitts was phenomenal. Maybe he will in the NFL. Hopefully not. Hopefully he breaks his legs. Just kidding. But with Kyle Trask, you'll say everybody said, like on the other show, Matt was saying, Tom was saying, I'm pretty sure half of you were saying it as well. I don't know how half is with 3, but you're all saying you could put any quarterback in that Bucs offense and will be still amazing. So you're saying Kyle Trask won't have that power to throw to?
I don't know that I would have said that.
Numbers.
because your other option was Jameis Winston, which I've been very clear about my feelings in him on this podcast. But no, I get what you say. I get what you're saying. It is. He's going to the right place. There's no doubt about that. Who else did you pick up? Sort of. Obviously, you talked about free agency. You brought everyone back. Was there anybody else you picked up in the draft that you really liked?
Well, before I do, I can see Mark just like laughing at Trask, and I want to know what is your problem with Trask?
Yeah, I want to know what he thinks as well, because I think he's ready for this one.
So Trask came into Florida and wasn't even the starting quarterback. He was the backup quarterback originally, and he came in. He didn't even start at high school. Trask didn't even start at high school. Let's get this right as well. And then he got an opportunity to start in Florida and did very well. But he had some really good pieces around him. We had Kadarius Toney and he had Kyle Pitts. Also, what he did have is he had Dan Mullen. Now, we talked about Urban Meyer last week, who's now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dan Mullen was his offensive coordinator for many years. You know what I mean? And he was the one who along with Urban Meyer, designed this spread offense and RPO offense that we see now filtering into the NFL. So, Dan Mullen is like a bona fide, offensive whiz in college football is what I'm seeing. So if anybody can make a quarterback good in college is Dan Mullen. And you throw in 2 first-round draft picks who's thrown 2, and you're going to look quite well. Now, what does Kyle Trask do well? He's got really good arm power. He can throw the ball downfield. He reads defenses reasonably well, and he takes chances with the ball. Perfect for Bruce Arians. He wants to throw the ball downfield. He's not too bothered about mobility or anything like that, which is good because Kyle Trask is a virtual statue. He's not going to churn up the odds. He's not going to move a little bit. Although he is quite strong body, think Ben Roethlisberger, but a little bit less mobile, but hard to bring down. What's the problem? You're saying, well, where's the rub, Mark? This is what I'm saying. Hasn't started much football. There's a reason why he didn't start at high school. There's a reason why he didn't start straight out the gate at Florida. When we go to his bowl game, and you took away his main weapons in the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, we saw a terrible performance from Kyle Trask on the national stage. Now, that is arguably the acid test. You're in the bowl game, you're playing Oklahoma, you're up against Spencer Rattler, this quarterback who's on the other side for Oklahoma, and you're up against this other high-powered offense. Can you keep pace with them when your best weapons are going to be neutralized or not on the field? And the answer was no. That's what he's going to see in the NFL every single week. That's what he's going to see in the NFL every single week. Don't get me wrong, Jamie, I think where you took him was about where he should have went. Back end of round 2, start of round 3 was about his position. Would I be surprised if in 2 or 3 years' time, Kyle Trask comes in and has an adequate NFL career? No, not at all. I think he'd be... Look, Mike Glennon was a starter for a few years in the NFL. And Kyle Trask is already a better player than Mike Glennon was. But is he going to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady? Are you going to not be going back to the quarterback well in in the next 15 years? I don't think that's the case, Jamie. I think he'll be a good backup quarterback. I think he'll be a good spot starter. Is he going to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady? I'm sorry, mate, but I don't think that person's on your roster yet.
Okay, so I think we've covered Trask, but...
Trask or Winston?
Winston.
Okay, we'll get
Winston.
to Winston.
Don't get Winston. Winston was a first-round overall pick, number 1 pick.
We'll get to Winston in a bit. Don't worry about that. That's half my notes on the Saints. What else have you got for the Bucks, Jamie? Have you got anything else other than trash? You got other stuff that you've been impressed with, or?
I literally thought you said trash then, just to spite me. That's fine. Yeah, like I said, we did okay in the first round. We took Joe Tryon. I don't know a lot about the offensive linebacker from Washington, but I'm hoping he's going to be all right. I was going through all the picks that we had, and there's a lot of offensive linesmen. We took about 2 or 3, I want to say, just to add that extra power. The one that intrigued me the most is we traded up with Seattle in round 4 to get Jalen Darden. from North Texas for a wide receiver. Now we've already got young wide receivers. I love Scotty Miller. You don't really see a lot of Tyler Johnson, but hopefully he's going to be all right. This guy, I don't know whether he's going to get a lot of reps with Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin in there, and then you've got Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson in there. Second, third years coming, but offensive lineman to protect Brady, Trask maybe in the future as well. Who knows? I'm happy with the draft. I think the main thing with the Bucs is we brought everybody back, and that's what everybody's going to focus on. We brought everybody back. Will I see any of these players start? Probably not. Like Joe Tryon was a first-round pick. He might have a few. Like if we do really well and we win most of the games, he might get the back end of the season where we're already kind of guaranteed to go to the playoffs. He might get a few games. I'd love to see Kyle Trask come in. That's what I'm looking forward to preseason to see what he's going to be like. But Brady, if he wins this year, is he going to retire?
When you win the Super Bowl and you bring so many pieces back, you're not looking for starters. You won the fucking Super Bowl. How much better can your roster get? What you're looking for is you're looking for players who can keep their foot on the gas when your starters have to come out the game. So you look at like your two pass rushers, and you look at Shaq Barrett, and you look at Jean-Pierre. What's his name? Yeah, JPP. And what you're looking at is well, these two of me starters, but they can't play every single down because one's missing a finger and is on the wrong side of 30, and the other one's undersized and does an incredible job undersized. But there's situations where I'm going to need to rest them. If I go get Joe Tryon, can I bring him in, and will he bring the same intensity? Will he give the opposition's offense a rest when I take JPP or Shaq Barrett out? And that's what they've done. They've brought in Joe Tryon and went, look, we don't need you to be a starter. What we need you to do is we need you to keep the pressure on. You know, like when we look through Jalen Dorden, you mentioned Jalen Dorden. Jalen Dorden is fast. He runs a 4.4 speed. He had a pretty slow 40 time by his standards. By all reports, he's meant to be a 4.3 guy. He ended up in the 4.4s. His short shuttle was really good. I think he'll probably make his name on special teams at the start. No one's expecting him to come in and beat out Godwin or Evans or Brown. But what you're expecting is you're thinking, well, come on, have somebody who can contribute in special teams. Will he be returning kicks? Will he be returning punts? If we throw him in, you know, is he going to give the defense something to think about? And his speed is, you know what I mean? You've got 4 good receivers ahead of him if we're tossing Scotty Miller. You know what I mean? So he's going to be 5th on the depth chart. He's going to maybe get 10 targets this year if he's lucky. But what else can he bring to your franchise? Mainly in special teams. Can he be a gunner? Can he be a kick returner? Can he be a punt returner? Can he be in field coverage? That's what you're looking from him, and his speed would suggest he could be, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely one of them I always looked at on Madden. Anytime I played a Madden game, I'd always look to get somebody in to have that kick returner or punt returner because I think their main option is Scotty Miller. Like, I love Scotty Miller. He isn't the quickest, but, you know, he can break away at those points. I
think what was really impressive as well is, Jamie, obviously bringing back the full team's amazing. And I said at the time, that's the best off-season anybody can have. And they didn't even add anyone. The Super Bowl champions just bought every single piece back, including their coordinators. I think that also goes under the radar on this. Everyone looks at the players. They brought back Antonio Brown, or they've managed to keep Godwin, or now Leonard Fournette's coming back. And, you know, like, and Brady's extending his contract, and he's eating salary. I mean, how often does that guy sacrifice earnings for the good of the team? That's an underrated quality of Brady, by the way. You know, the guy's playing on about £23 million this year, which is less than what Derek Carr's slated to make. You know what I mean? So that tells you about how this guy sacrifices his pocket for what he wants, championship, legacy. You know? And there's not many NFL players who do that today. But most importantly, you brought back Todd Bowles. You know what I mean? You brought back Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles has had his chance. Has had his chance at head coaching before at the Jets. But he just won the Super Bowl for years. It wasn't Brady who won that Super Bowl. It was Tom Bowles' defense that won that Super Bowl. They stifled the best quarterback in the NFL. And I mean battered him. The battered Patrick Mahomes. That wasn't Brady doing that. That was Todd Bowles doing that. And to keep him in, to bring him back, and to say, look, you probably can go and be a head coach elsewhere. But how about staying here and repeating this again and keeping him as a coordinator was as good as a move as any that you made, Jamie.
Yeah, and I agree. And I definitely think it's going to be... I know we're going to go to the predictions later. But if we win it back, it will be the best season ever. It will be better than last year. I'm just hoping that this year we can win the division and then go on even further and get that first round bye and then carry on doing it again. Because...
So you're feeling optimistic then. We usually, like, if we're summing the team up, we usually get a prediction at the end. It's a bit more difficult when the person's a fan of the team, though, as I suspect they're often going to predict that they're going to do quite well. I mean, I've got to do the 49ers in a couple of weeks. So.
I tried to be a little bit unbiased and not have anything in the background. As usual, I have all my stuff in the background. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit impartial. I mean, Brady is getting old, isn't he? So you never know. Is he going to be able to do it again? Who knows? But that defense can. Like I said, defense wins championships. We won it in 2003 with our defense. We won last year's with our defense. So.
Speaking as a Brady denier, Bones, what do you reckon to that whole thing? I actually agree the defense won the Super Bowl. I know that was your point the day after the game as well. What do you think?
Is that why I am now a denier of Brady? Like, I said in that particular game, he was fine. Like, he played well, but the defense won the game. Was the overall
Brady
point?
Brady didn't deserve to win the MVP.
No, he didn't. One of your defensive players definitely deserved the MVP.
Shaq Barrett should have won it because I had a 10 on him to win it.
Yeah, I'd have taken. I had Shaq Barrett as well. I'd have taken that one, but maybe the bet is part of what blinded me to. But ignoring all that, I think the Bucs just proved the salary cap doesn't matter. Like, it's irrelevant now. You can do whatever you want.
They can restructure it well.
Yeah, you can restructure everything however you want. You can just bump it 10 years down the road. It doesn't matter. Like, so it'll be someone else's problem by then. Like, but no, then I don't think him getting any older is going to really change it. The way he runs his offense isn't. It's like you said. He can probably play. He probably can play till he's 50. Like, this guy, he plays a sensible, slow sort of, like, not slow, but he doesn't rush things. He doesn't run a lot. He doesn't take a lot of hits, and you've built a bit of extra into the O-line. Like, it's going to be a good year. I did want to mention that. I thought it was an interesting little tidbit. I think the Lions actually spoke to the Buccaneers on the draft day about who you were picking, because you were taking a defensive tackle, weren't you? They thought it was going to be Levi, and it wasn't. It was Tryon, but it was just an interesting little tidbit from inside the draft rooms where they thought both teams were going for a player at the same position from the same school, and it'll be interesting to see who had the better one. But no, in all seriousness, no, I think the Bucs did amazing. Like, you brought that entire Super Bowl winning roster back. Has anyone ever actually managed to achieve that before?
No, it's never happened. No,
like, that's unbelievable. It's just, yeah. Well played to them, and I think, like you said, keeping the defensive coordinator, who clearly did win that Super Bowl, is absolutely brilliant. Like, I just think they are going to be the team to beat in that division now. With Brees gone, I think they are top dogs in that division now. But that's for the predictions later. We'll talk about that more.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all pretty optimistic about the Bucs. It's hard not to be optimistic about a team that won the Super Bowl that brings its entire roster back. You know, I like to poke holes in most teams, but I am struggling with the Bucs. The only thing you can really say is the Brady thing. But every year it feels like we have the conversation of how much longer can he do this for, and it turns out there's at least another 12 months on it.
Everybody was saying that after game one when he threw 2 interceptions against the Saints and we lost, and he was like, he's done. Like, he's here for his retirement tour. Nothing's happening. There's just going to, like, fade into oblivion. And then all of a sudden, we didn't have a preseason, and that was his first proper game.
Yeah, that was the missed part.
4 or 5 games after. Done.
Doing touchdowns all over the place. Yeah. That's the thing about Brady. When I think about quarterbacks who look old, they have poor arm strength. And Brady's game's never really been predicated on arm strength. It's been predicated on intelligence, pre-snap reads, putting the ball in the right place, putting it in timing. And I kind of think now, we're not just going to admit that Brady's just not going to have a drop-off. He's just going to be brilliant until the day he decides to stop playing football. You know what I mean? No, he's just. I remember Richard Sherman. I saw an interview with Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman, notorious shutdown corner, played for you, John, played for Jordan's team, the Seahawks. He's now looking for a team, funny enough. And people were talking about his speed and just how he wasn't fast. You know, he didn't run a fast 4.340 or 4.440. He ran like barely a 4.5. And he said, yeah, I may not be fast, but my intelligence puts us where I need to be half a second quicker than the wide receiver. And I think that sums up Tom Brady. Yeah, I may not be athletic. Yeah, I may not have Josh Allen's arm. Yeah, I may not have Patrick Mahomes' ability to throw off multiple platforms. But you see my brain. You see my ability to break down and look at the defense and know where the weakness is before the ball's snapped. That means that's what gives me. That's why I don't have to have that stuff, because I just know where to deliver the ball and on time and with timing and where the matchups are and how to exploit a defense. The guys, look, people will argue, is he the best quarterback of all time? You know, people will argue it. You know, I'll argue it. I'll say, well, maybe there's others who have been at a bit more panache. But look, Super Bowls mean a lot. This guy's won Super Bowls now with multiple franchises. You know what I mean? We can't deny that this guy's he's what Michael Jordan was to basketball. He is to the NFL. You know?
Yeah, it's crossed that threshold now, hasn't it? Like, to win Super Bowls with multiple franchises, not many quarterbacks have done that, I don't think. I don't know the stat, but I don't feel like there's been a ton of them. Certainly the legendary ones, if you start looking at people like Brett Favre, Montana didn't win it with the Chiefs. You know, there's a few that have transferred and not been able to do it. I think you're right about Brady. I think it's finally answered that question of, was he so good for so many years in New England because of the system or because of him? I think what we're seeing now is the system was elevated by Brady, not the other way around, because he's gone to a different system and he's having the same results. And it probably isn't in some ways. And I think I might have said this before the start of last season. Arians' offense is not necessarily Brady friendly because of what it asks the quarterback to do, but he's obviously tailored that a little to be. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? You get the best quarterback in the league, you're going to tailor it to them, aren't you? But yeah, I think you know, you have to be optimistic about the Bucs, don't you? Really, I think when we come to do the predictions later on, I think they're going to figure very highly, if not at the top. But we'll not spoil the rest of the show. Let's see what case we've got for the Falcons. Let's go over to our purveyor of poverty franchises, Bones. What you got for the Falcons?
I don't think this week I've got a poverty franchise, to be honest.
I don't. No, I don't
at all.
You got
I think
a
the Falcons
franchise that can't hold a lead, but yes.
That was going to factor into something I'm going to come on to anyway. So we'll get into that, because it's a good point, but it's also an interesting point for Atlanta on the same time. So I think Atlanta's a cool team to look at right now. They've just signed Arthur Smith, who, like I said before, was sort of like the hot pick of the coaching hires this year. It was where is Arthur Smith going to go was one of the biggest talking points. And it's the Shanahan tree. It's what's quite popular at the moment. We talked about it in other episodes, where it's the play action, it's that style of offense. So it will be interesting to see. They've signed, as we all know, the unicorn Kyle Pitts, which everyone is very excited to see play football, including myself. Like, this guy is phenomenal. He played I think it was only 7 games last year. He was the Gators' lead in touchdowns and receptions and yardage, and probably would have been the overall leader for the Gators had he played all the games last year that he could have played. Like, he's 6'6", 245 pounds, and he does not move like someone who is 6'6" and 245 pounds. This is why this guy is unbelievable. Like, he can create mismatches with linebackers and safeties, and he will be playing, like, he'll probably play a bit on the line. He's not the worst blocker in the world. Like, people want to, like, it's kind of, when you're looking at Pitts, like, you are reaching for things to sort of be like, oh, well, this is a hole in his. The only hole there is like, maybe he's not the best blocker in the NFL, but we're going to see stuff like we see from the Raiders with Darren Waller. He's going to be thrown out to the outside. He's going to run deeper routes. He has that ability to match up with like a safety and just completely throw it's such a mismatch. Like, it's going to be really, really, really interesting to watch this guy play, like, for real. I think we all are going to be talking about this guy for a lot of years. And I think he's going to the right system. This is something I was going to talk about, was like Falcons right now, I know they've lost Julio, but I still think they're going to be just a super offense-focused team. They're going to be, if they're going to win games, and I think there's a chance that they're going to, I think potentially second in the division, but again, we're going to talk about predictions later on. I do think that they are going to be entirely offense-focused. They were last year. The defense still has holes. They've lost people, and they've signed other people, obviously. Like, their second signing of the night was Richie Grant, who I had a look a bit of Richie Grant's tape, and boy, can that guy tackle. When he hits a guy, he is proper dump tackling every single tackle he gets into. His form is unbelievable in that tackle game, and he looks like he's going to be a good safety for them. I think they announced it as defensive back. I think he's played a bit of corner in his college career, but he played a lot more safety last year, and he probably will do quite well at the safety position. Like I say, he's a good run stopper. Like, he will be good for the anti-run, like the counter run. Like, the Atlanta Falcons, I think. Someone might have to correct me if I'm getting this backwards, but last year they had a much better pass defense than they did run defense, so this is probably a good signing for that. I think the problem they've got is there's some of these picks that are definitely going to have to start day one because they lost people at other positions, and it might not work out for them. Like, Jalen Mayfield's probably going to move into guard. I don't think he's going to play tackle. He's not built for it. Like, Darren Hall was an interesting one. I wanted to bring this up because I heard someone say, "Oh, he's not fast enough," and it's like, I wanted to bring up something Mark mentioned earlier. Richard Sherman, again, notoriously not a fast quarterback. Like, you don't have to be fast if your brain's there, and this guy often puts himself in the right position. So I think in the first 4 rounds they made a little move as well, up to get a couple people. They made some right decisions. I think it's some good picks. I think it'll help them in places where they did need help. I do think there's still, obviously, they're going to get scored against. Like, the defense isn't going to stop a lot, like, I don't think. But their offense is going to be able to score a lot of points. Like, we saw, there's a lot of talk before the draft. Are they going to draft a quarterback? Are they going to move away from Matt Ryan? But then they committed to another 2-year deal with him. And it's, it was quite clear that the way the Falcons were looking at it is sort of a win now attitude. But I feel like letting Julio go, if you're planning on winning now, was a weird choice. But they got a couple picks out of it. Maybe not the picks that Falcons fans think they should have got for Julio Jones, because it is Julio Jones. But then you have to look at Julio Jones's contract and see that that's why you didn't get any first-round picks for Julio, is because the team that took him off you they're taking on a reasonably large contract obligation, and they're going to give you a bit less in terms of picks for what you've given up. But even without Julio, again, it's a good wide receiver core. The biggest area where I don't understand what they're going to do is running back right now, but it's a position at the moment within the NFL where, as we discussed before, you run a stable. You don't have to have the best running back in the NFL to have a run game anymore. You don't have to have he's obviously good. Let's not get into it. But you don't have to have Derrick Henry to have a good run game in the NFL anymore. You can have a stable of okay running backs that are situationally good and swap them around depending on which situation you need to play that running back right now. And I think that's what we're going to see from the Falcons run game next year. I don't think we're going to see any big stars in their running back room. But I think receiving wise, throwing wise, Matt Ryan is a good quarterback, and with Drew Brees' retirement, he is definitely the second best quarterback in this division, without a doubt. He is a really good quarterback. He's been MVP, and if they can bring him back to an MVP caliber, then yeah, that's going to be great for him. I think in a Shanahan-led, a Shanahan-style offense, he has more chance of being an MVP again. I think he's got the right system for it. The one question is, I guess, we haven't seen Arthur Smith use tight ends all that much at the Titans. I don't think the Titans aren't particularly famous for tight end usage, but I still think Kyle Pitts he's that good. It doesn't matter if you've used tight ends much in your coaching career. You are going to find uses for this guy. But overall, I think the draft was really good. I'd give him a solid B plus A for the draft. I think they got some really good picks. I think they got some positions that they needed: defensive tackles, defensive ends, cornerbacks. There was a good few defensive safety. There are a good few defensive picks in here that should hopefully, if not add depth, at least add depth. Some of them might end up being starters. Avery Williams looks like he'll be a good returner, to be fair. I think Avery Williams, even though he's slated as cornerback, will probably be their return guy. And then you got Frank Darby as wide receiver in the 6th round, which I guess at the time you didn't know Julio was going, but there you have it. Like, yeah, no, I think it's a good draft. I think they'll be an interesting team to watch the next year, if not only because they're going to be entirely basing winning games on scoring points. They're not going to be winning games based on defending based on what they look like right now. So yeah, they'll be one to watch just because they'll be fun. They'll be throwing the ball constantly.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of theirs. I think it remains to be seen how good a head coach the new guy is. But I will say this: Dan Quinn had long since burnt out his welcome in Atlanta. When you hire a defensive-minded head coach, you expect to have a good defense, and with the exception of the Super Bowl year, and even that let them down late in the game, they haven't really had that. So I don't. The issue for me with the Falcons is kind of caught between two stools, and you kind of touched on it yourself with the Matt Ryan stuff and the Julio stuff. They're a team that has the cap situation of a team trying to win now, but the roster of a team that needs to rebuild. And why they were unable to get so much for Julio, who is a fantastic player, everyone knew they needed to trade him, and that significantly impacts the market. It's the same reason they couldn't really draft a QB. I think we talked about it on the draft podcast. Couldn't really draft a QB because they are committed to Ryan and his contract for at least 2 more years. So it kind of catches them in a bit of a weird spot, I think. They're a little bit like they're halfway through a rebuild on defense, it feels like. As you said, the draft was largely defensive players trying to get some youth in there, trying to get that sort of, in a way, trying to get that defense from the Super Bowl year back. Young, athletic, sort of dynamic defensive players. Drafting Pitts, obviously, who's a brilliant talent. I think any team would have been happy to get him. I personally don't know that they went into the draft thinking we must have Kyle Pitts, but when you're sitting there, how can you not? You know, he's so far and away the best player on the board at that time. So, yeah, I don't know with the Falcons. It feels like it could go either way. As you've said, it's going to take a lot of guys starting early for them to be successful. You know, they're going to have to start players with little experience. And I think that's my concern. But we'll see. I don't know. First year of a new coach as well is always a bit of an unknown. There aren't many rookie head coaches that go deep into the playoffs. It does happen every once in a while, but it's fairly rare. I think that was a good summary. I do. I think there's a lot to like, but there's just things where you're thinking, what next?
I did forget to mention something that I just realised. The game against the Buccaneers that Jamie mentioned. Atlanta were looking really good in the first half of that game. Like, their offense was really strong. Like, Matt Ryan threw for like 300 and something yards in the first half of the game. Scored multiple touchdowns, had a great game. Second half, defense fell apart. Brady came out, tore them apart. Like,
I wasn't talking about the Bucs here. I'm talking about half of their games that season.
Well, yeah, I mean, Atlanta's historically choked quite a lot. They choked against us last year when Gurley scored a touchdown.
Cowboys was the one I remember. They were battering the Cowboys and fell apart. I actually think Atlanta has now got some sort of mental block when they have a big lead. After the Super Bowl, I think it's one of those things you can sort of feel it. And it does impact teams. You know, teams won't necessarily say this, but it does impact how you are psychologically when you've got players who have been in that situation. Suddenly it's like, oh shit, we're winning this game. This is going far too well. I do think there's a little bit of there's just something there that's hung over from the Super Bowl. It's been a few years now, but you can tell I think it still follows the organization around. Maybe the change of culture, with the head coach and obviously a bit of a turnover in the roster, maybe that'll help them. What are you thinking about the Falcons, Mark? Are you a fan of this or not? I know you love Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kyle Pitts. Do you think tight ends notoriously come into the NFL and struggle? It takes a while for a tight end, I think, to make an impact. Like you've got a tight end at the Lions, Hawkinson, who you took high, and of course you took Eric Ebron at the Lions as well high. And I think it's one of the harder positions to really make a go of it. You know what I mean? They don't come in and normally they take a while to get going. I think that Kyle Pitts will be lucky if he sees 50% of his snaps as an inline tight end player. I think you're going to see him as an ex-receiver, split out wide in the role that Julio Jones was filling. I think you're going to see him lined up in the slot, and I think you were right in mentioning Darren Waller Because I think that's how he's going to be used. He's going to be used as Waller is used for the Raiders. He's going to play a bit in tight end. He's going to play a bit in the slot. He's going to play a bit at X receiver. And that's really what they needed. I think that's why they felt comfortable moving on from Julio Jones. They've got a number of good receiving options there. They've got Calvin Ridley, who really came into his own last season. They've got Russell Gage in the slot, who's more than handy. You know what I mean? And can have stack-up games, where he stacks up big catches and big totals. They've got Zacchaeus, if I'm pronouncing his name right, who came in last year and did really well. Zacchaeus, he's still there. And, of course, now they've got Kyle Pitts. I don't know if the offense is going to miss anything for Julio Jones not being in it. That's strange that when you're talking about such a really good player like Julio Jones. But I genuinely think they won't miss much. You know what I mean? I think Albert Smith will be in there, and he'll be, he'll look at what he's got, and he did wonders for Ryan Tannehill. And anybody who could coach him up and make him a top 10 quarterback after what we saw of him in Miami, is clearly somebody who's very good at calling an offense. Mike Davis at running back, they brought him across from Carolina. We saw him do well when Christian McCaffrey went down injured. He did well, but, can he do that when there's more pressure and he's the guy, he's not the guy who's just filling in for the one who was meant to be the guy who's now injured. But Mike Davis did really well and he didn't let anybody down in Carolina. I just look at this team and I go, you've got superstars legitimately pretty much all over the place. You've got Deion Jones at linebacker. You've got Grady Jarrett at defensive tackle. You've got Dante Fowler at defensive end. You know what I mean? You've got Calvin Ridley at wide receiver. You've got Matt Ryan at quarterback. You've got Jake Matthews as left tackle. And this is just off the top of my head, names that I'm naming here. And I kind of think, are they in a rebuild? Or they're just not the sum of their parts? Did Dan Quinn just not have this right? Because when you name those players, what I've just named there, this team has been underperforming in that case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, they've been underperforming because they've got a lot of talent on there that our franchises would love. Who wouldn't love Deion Jones in linebacker? Who wouldn't love Grady Jarrett playing 3-tech? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't love these players? You know what I mean? And I kind of think maybe it's just a case of they needing to move on from Dan Quinn. And I don't know if they're in entire rebuild. I think they have got talent. I think we just need to see what this new coach is about. But I don't think they're a million miles away. I like what they did bringing in Richie Grant. He did tidy up his tackling in 2020. In 2019, he was a fucking missed tackle machine. But he clearly worked on it. Came back for his senior year. He was a 23-year-old senior. So I guess it was a gamble, taking a chance. He's going to be 24 before a ball snapped. And he's came in, and the thing is, when you're drafting a 24-year-old, you better be the finished product. And he looks more like the finished product now as a result. He tidied up his tackling. He can legitimately play strong safety, free safety. And in the Senior Bowl, he even played some corner snaps. You know what I mean? They've got AJ Terrell, who I liked out with Clemson last year. They took him in the first round. He started coming on towards the end of the season. They've got Deion Jones, got Dante Fowler, they've got Grady Jarrett. They've got some pieces on defense. I think they're a pretty well-balanced team. And to be honest with you, they should really be pushing for a wild card place. I really think that they're not in total rebuild. I think they've got enough on there to be able to go, hey, the Saints are dropping off. The Panthers have an unknown quantity in Sam Darnold at QB. Why can't we not be the second best team in this division? Why can't we not get a wild card place? They've got the talent.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. They could definitely be one of those teams that, perhaps doesn't win the division, but catches fire enough with a bit of a new voice that they could, nick a wild card spot. And I wouldn't like to play them, in the playoffs, to be honest. I think, as you say, there are some good pieces there, and I do think I tried not to say anything outlandish and too critical of any head coaches this week, but I don't rate Dan Quinn as a coach. So personally, I think you're probably right about them not quite being at the level they should have been at while he was there. But the difference is, do you know what Arthur Smith's going to bring? I don't know that we do know that. He did well at the Titans, but there's been a laundry list of good OCs that have gone on to be head coaches and not done a great deal. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. What about you, Jamie? You openly professed to hate them earlier, so I'm not expecting an impartial view here. But what are we thinking of the Falcons?
Out of the other three teams, I prefer the Falcons over the Panthers and the Saints. So I'd like to see them do well. Like that, they do have a good team. I don't understand why they choke so much. It's fun to watch, don't get me wrong. Like, they're winning so many games and choking. I was just having a look at some stats because I'm pretty sure, like, they have the best kicker in the league. So what does that say? Like, if they've got the best kicker in the league, they can't finish games. And I was having a look at their red zone percentage. 53.45% of their end zones, of their red zone coverage, ended in touchdowns. So they're kicking it too much and obviously getting points with the 3 points. Carolina are actually below that as well, strangely enough. And then, like I said, the Bucs are 11th. New Orleans were 5th when it comes to red zone percentages. So maybe they need that power of Kyle Pitts in there, that big tight end, to try and hopefully get them across that threshold and get these catches in the end zone. Like Bucs had Gronk, for example, or Mike Evans. You knew in the red zone, you're going to Mike Evans because you know he is going to catch that ball. They didn't really have that player. Like Julio Jones, I think is quite similar to Tyreek Hill. Like, if you're on your own 20-yard zone, you'd throw it and you know he's probably going to run about 60 yards and maybe get a touchdown that way. But in the red zone, they were awful. So
yeah, he never really became that red zone threat. He was always kind of perpetrated to be one, especially when he was drafted. But I don't think he ever became a consistent red zone guy.
No, you're right. He was always a between the 20s guy. And I think I know in fantasy football, you'd be wary about picking Julio Jones because he doesn't get touchdowns. And I don't know if it's because they don't throw him the ball enough or it's because he doesn't get touchdowns, you know?
It's an odd one, isn't it?
And I'm pretty sure as well, Matt Ryan did throw the most yards last season, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. So they threw the most yards, yet they are the 7th worst performing team in the red zone. Yeah. So it shows you they can get the yards, but they can't finish them off. If they can't finish them off, then what are they going to do? So Kyle Pitts hopefully is going to come in and save that for them and give that red zone presence there so they can change these kicks into 6s, 3s to 6s, or 7s, hopefully, with your kicker as well. So, and that was the thing. They were winning games and then throwing them away. So if you change,
and that's bad coaching. That's bad coaching. That's why I think moving on from Dan Quinn, that point you made there, Jamie, they were winning games and they threw it away. That's bad coaching. That's bad coaching. That's why Dan Quinn's not their head coach anymore. And that's why they've still got Matt Ryan at quarterback, because they know it's not his fault. Like you said, the guy's a leading yards thrower in the NFL. You're not blaming him. You're looking at Dan Quinn and you're going, he's putting you in a position to win. You're the coach, go friggin' win it. And he's not. And that's why I don't think they're as bad as their record suggests. I think their coach was as bad as what it suggested. Do you know what I mean, Jamie?
And the Falcons finished bottom, 4 for 12 they were last season.
Yeah. I think it'll be totally
with the
different
most thrown yards.
Yeah, I think Mark's 100% right. I was going to mention that. I do think a lot of their trouble in the red zone did come down to just none of the right plays. Like, it just something was not right, and I think you're 100% right to say it's not the players in this situation. All right, Julio's not the biggest touchdown scorer in the world, but there are other players in that team that could have been scoring touchdowns quite happily, and like you say, they weren't scoring as often as they should. And I think a lot of that does, like Mark said, it's just decision making. It's play calling. It's why Arthur Smith is now here, and I think that system will. I think that system stands the chance to do much better in the red zone. Like, I think Shanahan's system will be better there than whatever system was in place before, because who knows what that system was? Apparently, one where we throw games all the time. It's
the Tottenham system. You just joke and throw it away.
Okay.
I mean, they did try to sort of ape the Shanahan system after he left. He obviously came to us. They had, I think, Steve Sarkisian was the OC the first year, who's now, I don't know where he is now, actually. I think he's back in college now. They tried to keep it going for a while, and then they kind of fell into a bit of a quagmire. They were just a nothing offense, really. Neither one thing nor the other. Just a very volume, as you say. Ryan's thrown for a lot of yards, but it's very volume passing. It's not like, to me, there's nothing hugely impressive about what they've been doing. They're not explosive. And a lot of the time as well, although they do have a propensity to throw games away, they were playing catch-up in a lot of games as well. Because that defense was absolute shite. Like, in almost every game I saw, they were bad. So that's going to be the key. But, I mean, it's one of those things. There'll be a harder team to play next year, I think. I think that's probably the key. We talked about a few teams like that. Said the Lions were a bit like that as well this year. They're going to be the tougher team for people to play, and that can help you. And certainly when they're in the Georgia Dome, if fans are back, I think that'll make a difference as well. So I'm guessing then, Bones, overall summation, you don't have them winning the division, but you think they might sneak a wild card, maybe?
I think they're a definite chance of second place out of this division easily. Definitely. Like, Matt Ryan is the second best quarterback in this division now, without a shadow of the doubt. They are going to be a passing team this year. They are going to be scoring touchdowns. And maybe the defense looks better. Mark did make some good points about they do have some names on that defense. It is weird that it didn't work as well as it should have done.
Yeah.
But I'm not ruling out that the defense looks as bad as it did this year, and that all their wins are predicated on just scoring as many points as physically possible. But I think they do stand a chance of doing that. So yeah, second, I think second is fair.
I think they'll be an entertaining watch either way. I think it'll be good to see them this year. Hopefully they get back to somewhere close to the best. It'll make the division more interesting, that's for sure. Okay, well, team number 3 in the division. I'm going to hand over to Carolina's newest fan, Mark Steele. What you got on the Panthers, Mark? I know you're a big fan of what they've been doing.
I just love them. I just love the Panthers. If I was coming into the NFL now as a fan and I was trying to pick a franchise to follow, I would just follow the Carolina Panthers. They're just so... David Tepper is such a good owner who's coming. He's got oodles of cash. Jamie's left because he's took a huff. They've got oodles of cash. They've got Matt Rule, who's just such a brilliant head coach. And it's weird that because you look at his first season and you go, but he wasn't that brilliant. But I just love the guy. I just love him. They've got a really good offensive coordinator and Joe Brady. I like Snow, who's their defensive coordinator. Admittedly, didn't have many parts to work with. But they finished 17th ranked in defense last year with very little talent on that defensive side of the ball. Very young kind of defense. And I just think the arrow's just so up for Carolina. It's just so up. Let's go back over their draft classes of the last few years. I follow the draft and I always have a few players who are my guys. And I tell you what, the Carolina Panthers always bloody take them. You know what I mean? So Brian Burns, the year we took Cleve Ferrell as number 4, I love Brian Burns. I was like, if I'm taking any edge number 4 and I'm not taking Bosa, the only one I'm considering is Brian Burns. He's fast. He's got good bend. He'll get the quarterback. And we saw that in his second year. We saw him developing that edge rushing presence, you know what I mean? Then last year, I loved Derek Brown. Guess who they took? They took Derek Brown again, you know what I mean? They took this guy who can play 3 tech, 1 tech, 5 tech. He can hold up in the run. He can push the pocket and push the passer. He's athletic for his size. He's not going to let anybody down. And he started coming on towards the back in the year. I love Jeremy Chin. They only went and took Jeremy Chin in the second round. I said he's a safety, but really he's a box. He's a matchup linebacker. He'll play as many snaps in linebacker as he will at strong safety. Let him rush the passer. Let him be a bit Derwin James. Let him be a bit Jamal Adams. But also let him be a little bit Dion Buchanan and let him be an undersized, linebacker. And they did. I love Jeremy Chin. They seem to be drafting really well because they seem to be following my advice. What they're doing basically is they're taking my guys and it's paying off for them. And they've done it again this year. If anybody will remember, I released a draft in the middle of the season. It wasn't even the middle of the season. I think it was before week 8, before the free agency. And I said, Joe Horn. And I put him for your team, John, the 49ers. And I went,
yeah.
And I went, should he be picked this high? I don't know, but he's my guy, and I don't give a shit. So I get to slot him where I want because this is my mock draft. And I put him in the top 15 to San Francisco 49ers, and that was at about week 6. Well, actually, it seems I actually underappreciate him because he got drafted top 10. And he was the first corner off the board. I love Joe Horn. I love Joe Horn. He's a kind of smack you in the mouth man corner that you want in today's NFL. Because he's going to get beaten, but you know what? He's going to come back with attitude the next play and not give a fuck. And that's what you need in the NFL as corners these days because you can't cover everybody 100% of the time. You've got to be able to dust yourself up and get yourself back on it and get back in that opposing player's grill and hit him in the very next play. And Joe Horn is feisty. And, you know, that defense really struggled in pass coverage last year despite lining up in press coverage as much as it did. And that's what they were missing, a man coverage corner. And they went and got the best man coverage corner in the draft. He may not be as refined as Patrick Surtain. He may not be as athletic as Caleb Farley, but he's a proper in-your-grill man coverage corner. Love that selection. Love Joe Horn. You know, he played against... If you want to know what Joe Horn is, go watch his tape for South Carolina against Auburn and watch what he did against, you know, Seth Williams and all them against Auburn. You know what I mean? He was outstanding. I think he had 2 picks that game. He locked down a big receiver. He was in his face every single snap. You know what I mean? And that's what you're going to see from Joe Horn in the NFL. I like their second-round pick, Terrence Marshall, the wide receiver from LSU. Why do I like it so much? Because Joe Brady was in LSU. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, gets a 5-star prospect who he's coached before. And if anybody's going to know what to do with Terrence Marshall Jr., it's going to be Joe Brady. He's going to line up an X receiver. I presume that Robbie Anderson is going to be a Z receiver. And DJ Moore is going to alternate between Y and Z and X. I really like what they've got on their wide receiver package. They had 2 wide receivers who got over 1,000 yards last year in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. And they've just thrown a 5-star prospect in Terrence Marshall into the mix. If anybody doesn't know what's the difference between an X, Y, and Z receiver, I'll tell you now. The Z receiver is traditionally called the flanker. They're normally the fastest receiver on the team. They can go in motion. If you can go in motion, it means you can see what kind of coverage you're in. If you go in motion and the defender follows you, the corner follows you, you know you're in man coverage. If you go in motion and that corner stays still, you know you're in zone coverage. So your Z receiver, your flanker, is normally one who can be speed down the field, but also has the ability to run shallow routes and across the field and stuff. I'm presuming DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson are going to play those 2 positions. Your X receiver, what's the difference between an X receiver? Your X receiver is tied to the line of scrimmage. You've got to have 7 players lining up on the line of scrimmage each offensive snap. Otherwise, it's a illegal formation. So you're presuming that your offensive line is going to be 5 of those, and your tight end's going to be 1. Then you look at, and then you go, okay, then well, the next one's going to be our X receiver. What does an X receiver have to be good at? Well, because they're tied to the line of scrimmage, they're going to continually see often cornerback press coverage because you can get jammed at the line of scrimmage. They can have their hands on you straight away. You don't have that cushion of getting up. So you're going to have to be big. You're going to have to be strong. You're going to have an ability to be able to have that pace to be bumped to the sideline and still run up. You're going to have to get open early. You're going to have to get off press coverage. It's normally the number 1 wide receiver in any offense that traditionally plays the X. And that's what Terrence Marshall will be. He's strong. He's 6'3". He's fast. He's big-bodied. You know, you let Robbie Anderson and let DJ Moore feast on number 2 receivers, bearing in mind they both have 1,000-yard seasons, and let this guy take on the press coverage. Let this guy be the press coverage. Your wide receiver is your slot. It's either your tight end is your wide receiver, or if you're playing with 3 wide receiver sets, it's your slot, and they're going to play in the slot position. So that's your X, Y, and Z receiver, just in case anybody wanted to know that. So Terrence Marshall is going to be your X. Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore are going to be your Z and your Y. They haven't really got a tight end. They don't really need one. They've got Ian Thomas and Dan Arnold, who they brought across from from the Cardinals. I think they're going to line up in 3 wide receiver sets more often than not. They've got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. We all know what a threat he can be with the ball in his hands. And they drafted Chuba Hubbard, who is going to be a little bit in the receiving game, a little bit in the running game. We know he's not going to be a starter because McCaffrey's there. It's a bit like what we were talking about earlier on with you, Jamie. Can this guy come on the field and not give defenses a rest when Christian McCaffrey's there? And Chuba Hubbard's going to keep the defense honest. You know, he had a really good career at Oklahoma State. He hasn't got breakaway speed, but he's got good hands. He can pass block. He can churn 4 to 5 yards a run. 3 of them is going to be a first down every single time. And he can catch the ball and he can keep it on a receiver. So, you know, like, I like what they're building. I just like the direction that they're going in. I suppose the big gamble is they traded for Sam Darnold when theoretically they could have stayed put and took one of these quarterbacks. Might have been Mac Jones. Probably would have been Mac Jones, to be honest with you. Although they would have had a shot at Justin Fields as well. Is Sam Darnold and Joe Horn a better deal than Justin Fields? You know, we've got to think, is Sam Darnold, what have we seen at Sam Darnold at the Jets? You know, is he as good as what people said he was coming out? Or is it because he had Adam Gase? I mean, we saw what Ryan Tannehill's done when he moved away from Adam Gase and what he's become. And I think that Matt Rule, who is an offensive-minded coach, and Joe Brady, who's going to be a head coach in the next year, if not 2, are going to be looking and they're going to go, we back ourselves to get the best out of Sam Darnold. We back ourselves to get what other teams haven't got out of them. They've certainly got the credentials to do it. Yeah, so Sam Darnold, that's the biggest question. That's the biggest question on this, you know, on this roster. Have we seen what that Sam Darnold really is, or have we not? And are we going to see what he really is under Matt Rule and under Joe Brady? Outside of that, I really like the direction that they're going in. They were in rebuild when they got brought in, and look, there's no expectations on this team. I just like the direction that they're going. I think they've got good balance. I like their defensive line. I like the offensive line. They brought Cameron Irvin over from the Dallas Cowboys. He'll start left tackle. They brought back Tyler Morton on the franchise tag. He's one of the better right tackles in the NFL. They drafted Braden Christensen from BYU, who was protecting Zach Wilson. He could potentially be their future left tackle. You know, they've got Matt Paradis, who's at centre. He's a steady player. You know, they've got Pat Elflin, who was a high draft pick for the Vikings and who looks better as a guard than he did as a centre. You know, he's in there. And I look at this team and I think they're young, but they're already showing what they can be. You know, they're already a defence that was led by young players. Brian Burns, Derek Brown, Yuta Gross-Matos, the corner who are Jackson, who they got from LSU a few years back. He was good. They got another corner, Tony Pride from Notre Dame last year, who played more snaps at corner than I think anybody anticipated. He's going to be better for that. He's going to be a better player for that experience. They've now brought in Joe Horn. They've got Jeremy Chin. You look on the offensive side. 2 wide receivers have got 1,000 yards, and now you're throwing in Terrence Marshall Jr., who's a 5-star prospect. You know, and you've got Christian McCaffrey, and you've got a decent offensive line. I just like how they're building. I just like everything about them, top to bottom. They're really good franchise to follow. And if I was going to be an NFL fan today, I would be picking the Carolina Panthers. They're my second favourite team. You know, like, obviously I'm an Auburn fan and I had Cam Newton. You know, like, so it's hard not to love them. You know what I mean? Or for me, at least anyway, because Cam Newton was there. And I loved him at Auburn. He was brilliant for Auburn. Yeah, it just makes us wish I was a Carolina Panthers fan, if truth be told. Like,
oh man, I mean, what can you say to that, really? I think you're right, Mark. I think when teams are in the position that Carolina have been in, all you can ask is that things start looking like they're heading the right way. We've talked about a few franchises I don't think we've, other than the Texans last week, I don't think we've been overly negative on any of them. And on a lot of the ones that are being rebuilt, we've said, yeah, they're heading in the right direction. I think Carolina is very much like that, but they're heading there quite quickly. And I think they're quite an exciting team. Good head coach, as you said, good offensive coordinator, and some great pieces on offense. The big question, as you rightly pointed out, is QB. I personally thought the move they made with Darnold was an interesting one, because I think they're banking on being able to get a guy and being able to turn that guy into a top 10 QB at a fraction of the price of what it would normally cost to get hold of a top 10 QB. We've seen what the trade market is for QBs this offseason. The Niners going up to the 3 pick, the suggested trades for Rodgers, the suggested trades for Watson before his issues. And we've seen what that market is. If you can get a guy like Darnold, who was thought by many to be the top quarterback in that year's draft, the year he was drafted, if you're getting him for a second-round pick and you trust your coaching staff to make him the player that everyone thinks he can be, why the hell wouldn't you do it? So a little bit like the Carson Wentz thing, except Wentz is a little bit more behind him. But, I think there is a lot of logic to that move, but it will determine how far they go, I think. I think it will determine how good they are. But even if it doesn't work out with him, they've not given up so much that they can't take a swing at QB next year or in future years, or maybe even acquire someone like Watson, like Rodgers. They have the capability to do that if they want to do that. I really, really like what they're doing, and they'll be a fun team to watch as well. If that offense clicks, there's so much athletic talent there. And defense, you mentioned Joe Horn. Horn is it's JC Horn, isn't it? Joe Horn's his dad, right? I knew that didn't sound right when I said it out loud. Yeah, I like you. I had him going to the Niners before we did the trade up. I thought he was a perfect fit for our defense. But as you also say, he's a perfect fit for a lot of defenses. A lot of teams play this physical style now, and I think he fits perfectly into that. I think he'll give him a real nasty edge. Let's come to you, Bones, because I think you've got a point to make about Darnold. I'll go to you first. I'll come back to you, Mark, as well.
I just wanted to briefly touch on Darnold because I think it bears thinking about how young this guy came into the league and what team he went to. I think the people who say, I'm not sold on Darnold going to the Panthers, I think they're being foolish and short-sighted, to be honest. I think Darnold actually stands a chance of being a really good quarterback. You got to remember, this guy's the same age as Joe Burrow, who came into the league last year as the best quarterback in the draft and went to the Bengals, and Bengals fans are very excited about Joe Burrow's future. But they are the same age. Those two players are the same age, and Darnold's already got 3 years under him in the league at this point, playing for the Jets of all teams, arguably the worst franchise in the league throughout all of history, other than us. I just think it's just, I don't think he's going to be as bad as everyone thinks he is. I think he had a rough time at the Jets, but I still think he didn't look that bad. He still had a 3,000 year. All right, it's not amazing, but he had 4,000 years in college. He threw a lot of touchdowns. Yeah, I just think Darnold's been slept on.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think I like what they did later on in the draft as well. Just, I forgot to touch on what they did later on in the draft. They drafted Deontay Brown, who many of us will know as the big-bodied guard who played for Alabama, that Alabama offense. He's never going to be a pull-and-move guard, but he's going to hit who's in front of him. He's a very good in-a-phone booth blocker. And, and those kind of players stick around and make rosters in the NFL. And if you're picking them up in the later rounds, like they did, you know what I mean? I think they got him in round 4 or maybe round 5. You know what I mean? Actually, I just checked. We just got him in round 6. When you're picking players like that in round 6, you're normally going, wow, that's a really good pick. He can make a roster, and I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. What I was impressed with was one of the way that they attacked the bottom end of the draft. They got Davion Nixon from Iowa, who was a 3-tech, and he was getting some first-round buzz. And I'm not too sure that they really needed the defensive tackle, but they went, he's there. We're going to take him anyway. You know, knowing that defensive lines are rotated and you keep players fresh and all that kind of stuff. And they've got Derek Brown, but now they've got Davion Nixon on that depth chart as well. And he's a decent 3-tech, you know. Keith Taylor, the big lad out of Washington, he's another big-bodied press cover corner that they got, and they got him in round 5. You know, and I like teams that just go, let's throw picks at big areas of need. Jamie's team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, done this. You know, like they must have threw multiple picks at mid-round cornerbacks over the last few years, and it's paid off for them. You know what I mean? It paid off for them, and they got some starters out of those picks, like, you know what I mean? You know, they got Carlton Davis. You know, they got Jamel Dean. You know, these were kids who they were throwing picks at the end of the drafts and stuff like that. Sean Bunton Murphy. You know what I mean? No, they were finding these players in the mid-late rounds as corners. And, you know, Keith Taylor, he could be one of those. He was a big-bodied Jamel Dean type of press cover corner at Washington. Not really fast, but big. You know what I mean? Big. 6'3" big. You know, big, smothering cornerback. Bit like Jamel Dean at Tampa Bay. And, you know, like, and what's the risk? What's the risk in round 5 and just going? He's got a body type. I've seen that do well in our division across at Tampa. They took a guy like this, and Jamel Dean's been a terrific corner for Tampa. You know, Sean Bunton Murphy, you know what I mean, has been another good player. And they're going, well, we've just seen them win the Super Bowl using this. Let's adopt it. And it's just throw picks at areas of need. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just like the way they've attacked it. I just like them 2 picks, Deontay Brown and Keith Taylor's late flyers. I just like them. I wouldn't be surprised if they stick on a roster and do something well for them as well, you know?
Yeah, I think corner is a very hard position to get right, and it's a very expensive position too. If you've got a top player at corner, you're spending a lot of your cap generally on keeping them there. So if you can hit on somebody in the later rounds that can become an effective starter for you, you're making a net gain there salary cap-wise. You can spend that money somewhere else. Even if you only get them for the rookie contract, even the late round picks sign 4-year deals, so you're going to control that for 4 years. You're going to get 4 good years out of them potentially. I think you're right. I think they seem to take chances on athletes down the board, guys that fit the profile of what they want at that position. It might not mean they run the fastest or whatever, but they do what the team needs them to do. I think, yeah, I agree. I think they've drafted really well. They look like a sensibly put together team right now. Be interesting to see where they end up. I think they're potentially a contender for this division. What about you, Jamie? I actually think I misspoke earlier. I think you said you hated the Panthers, not the Falcons. So
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't hate a lot of stuff. There's only one team in like the whole of football I hate in the world, and I'm talking soccer. And surprisingly, that's Celtic. Like that's the only team I despise in the world. I'm half Scottish, so all my family are Rangers fans. I'm a Liverpool fan as well. But I don't hate Man United. I don't hate Everton. I dislike them, but I loathe Celtic. Only team I hate. Like I want teams to do well. I want people from our division to it. Everyone hates me when I'm like I want English teams to do well in Europe. I have no rivalry there. I want it to be right. I want an NFC South team to win the Super Bowl to prove we're the best division. So I don't know. I'm weird like that. I don't know why, but ideally I want it to be the Bucs. But Panthers are a completely different breed when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. Without McCaffrey, they're nothing. It don't matter how many weapons you've got. McCaffrey is the Panthers. If there's no McCaffrey, there's no Panthers. It's simple. You saw that last season.
I would have argued that Teddy Bridgewater, because you had 2 1,000-yard receivers there. That's rare that you have 2 1,000-yard receivers. And I just think it was they needed to find somebody who was a little bit better than Teddy Bridgewater. And I think they've rolled the dice on Donald and think, let's hope it lands on a 6, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like I said, McCaffrey in that backfield is going to give him a little bit more stability. So you're not having to rely on the pass all the time. And you've got McCaffrey, who is pretty steady. I know I watched him play the Bucs in London, and he ran all over us. So I've seen it firsthand, unfortunately. He is an unbelievable player, and this is why he is the #1 overall draft pick in all of fantasy football, because he is one of the greatest fantasy football players. You know he's definitely getting your points, whether that's receiving or rushing. He is a different breed.
I think he's one of those players that's quite talismanic, isn't he? He is important to them. No matter how many good players they get, he's still going to be sort of the barometer of how far they go. I think a few teams have players like that, but it's definitely stood out with the Panthers. What a player he is, by the way. I watched him back at Stanford all those years ago. Some players to watch. Yeah.
I mean, you look back a few years ago, I think 2015, 2014, they were 15-1, the Panthers. 15-1. And now look at them. Don't you just love to see it?
Hey, I wouldn't get too smug, mate, because if I was back in the team in 3 years' time to be the champions of this team and to win it for the next decade in a row, I'd be back in the Panthers to be that team.
Well, I think what you are seeing now is they're doing the things that got them where they got to in 2014, 2015, drafting smartly, getting good athletes, and building it around a good head coach and a good staff of assistants. That's the bit that got lost somewhere in the middle. I don't quite know what happened in the interim period, but clearly something got a bit lost. But I think they're coming along quite nicely.
It's the best thing about NFL, though, isn't it? Like, you'll always have these dips. You'll have these great forms, dips, great forms, dips, great forms. It happens. I mean, granted, some are longer than others, unfortunately, Bones, but, you know. It happens.
Every week.
It's always got to happen, doesn't it? It's always got to happen.
Do you know what I do worry about? I do worry about how this team are going to be when they lose somebody like Joe Brady. That guy's ready to be a head coach. I'm quite surprised it wasn't this year already after what he did with LSU and Joe Burrow. Obviously, he was on the Saints staff, so he's been well coached and well taught by Sean Payton. He went to LSU and did well. He came across last year and had 2 1,000-yard wide receivers and ran a decent offense without Christian McCaffrey in the team. The guy's young. He's going to be a head coach probably at the end of this year. And I think a bit like Todd Bowles coming back for Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was Joe Brady coming back for the Panthers the best off-season move that happened for them? You know, was keeping him and Matt Rule together for at least another season? You know, was that the best move for them? I think it probably was. I really love Joe Brady. It's hard not to like him. Also, what he did with LSU and Joe Burrow when they won the national championship and they had, you know, like Jamar Chase and Terrence Marshall Jr. and Justin Jefferson, and you know, there's 2 of those wide receivers in our round 1 picks. The other one went round 2, and Joe Burrow, the quarterback, was a number 1 pick overall. When at one point he wasn't even thought of as a draftable quarterback. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think
he rose so far so quickly, didn't he? Under Brady, like.
Yeah, and I think like if Sam Darnold's going to be their quarterback, which they've put their eggs in the Donald basket, he better freaking keep his ears open and listen to everything that Joe Brady's telling them this year. Because I won't bank on him being there next year. Like he'll be a head coach somewhere, you know.
I think he turned down some opportunities this off-season, didn't he? I'm sure he was linked with a couple and decided against it.
I was going to say, I thought I heard that he had interviewed for something, or had at least been offered interviews by people, but had said he didn't want them. But
yeah,
I think Mark's right. I think he deserves it. I think he deserves a head coaching job, and probably will have one very, very soon.
He's young. Yeah. He's young. He's 31 years of age. And he's going to be like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type. He comes in when he decides to be a head coach, which is going to be on his terms. I think many franchises would love to have him. I think most of them will be requesting interviews with him. He'll be 32 at the end of the season. He's going to be the next wave of young head coaches, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan types, like, you know.
Yeah.
I look at what do you know where I think he'll end up? And this is just a little prediction. I can see him ending up in Arizona with the Cardinals. I can see the Arizona Cardinals moving on and deciding to move on a head coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think they've got a really good offense. They've got Kyler Murray. You know what I mean? And I think they'll move on. And I think that what they'll do is they'll go, Cliff Kingsbury, we brought you in to work with Kyler Murray. We've given you DeAndre Hopkins. We've given you Kyler Murray. we've got all these tools here, and you're yet to make a Super Bowl push, or you're yet really to make a playoff push. We'll move you off this year. And I think Joe Brady in Arizona could be really, really, really dangerous for the NFC West, you know?
I could see that because Kingsbury, I mean, I've made my thoughts clear on Kingsbury in the past. He's not a very good head coach, and I think there will be a point where Arizona have to decide how they take that next step. And I think Brady could pretty much call his shot there. If he wants a job and it's available, someone will give it to him, especially if he continues to develop the Panthers at the rate that he is. I guess we'll move on to Team 4 then, which is, I seem to always end up with the last team, but I think that's because I keep choosing good ones. I had the Texans last week, actually, so I'd like to just withdraw that statement. But I've got New Orleans this week. And, God, I mean, I feel like with New Orleans, there's always a lot to like. I think they have one of the best head coaches in the NFL. Whether people like him personally or not is a different matter. I personally, I don't like his demeanor. I think he's an entitled brat, but he's a hell of a head coach, and he produces offense out of nothing. Now he's going to have to do that this year. I'll come on to that in a second, but I still like what they do. I said on one of the draft podcasts that a lot of the time the Saints do some weird stuff in the draft that doesn't quite make sense. Peyton Turner in round 1, higher than people had him. I think he was an early second, I think, on most people's boards, maybe a mid-second. Ended up going late first. I don't hate it. If you're that good a team and you're picking that late in the draft, you can pretty much get the guy that you want. And the problem is, if you like somebody that's kind of on the verge of the second round, you can't guarantee that they're going to be there when you pick again. The next pick was 60, so I mean, there was a good 32, a good gap there between that pick and the next one, and I don't think Peyton Turner would have been there. I do think drafting Peyton Turner is a good pick. I think when you look at their options on the edge, they've got Cameron Jordan, who's played a long time in the league now, probably isn't going to play for a ton more years. But I think it speaks to the failure of picking Marcus Davenport a couple of years ago, and they actually traded up to get him, gave an extra first up, which doesn't seem to have panned out. I think he's got a chance to turn it around, but you can clearly see they're thinking ahead there. Didn't mind that pick. I think when you look at the Saints, you automatically think it feels like every year it's like, the defense just isn't quite good enough. It's not quite there. They do give up a lot of points. They have given up a lot of points in the past. So they seem to go defense a lot in the draft. Maybe this one will pan out. I quite like him as a player. I think he'll make an impact. They're not going to have him playing every down to start off with. I think if he can provide a couple of sacks and a bit of burst off the edge, they've gained something from it. I like the second round pick, Pete Werner, because when I look at that linebacker room, I ain't seeing a lot to be excited about, to be honest with you. Demario Davis has been in the league a long time. He's a decent player, but I don't see a lot else that I really like there. So I can see why they've gone for Pete Werner. He tested a bit better than he actually is. I think athletically, his test, his 40 and his explosiveness were all pretty good. Don't know he didn't seem like that on the field to me, but big college program guy, started fairly consistently. I think he'll slot right in. I think he'll be a day one starter. And if you can get that at pick 60, I think you're on the road to something good there. Adebo, the corner at Stanford in the third round. He was a guy. What's that?
So I liked him.
Yeah, me too. I had him as a Niners pick because obviously the Bay Area connection. I had him pretty high on my board for like the third round. So I like that pick. And they always seem to be looking for DBs. They've obviously got Lattimore. Patrick Robinson's on the other side. It's never really, I don't know. They always seem to add a DB every year, it feels like. And some of them pan out, some of them don't. A bit like the defensive ends, I guess. They always seem to be drafting defense. You look at some of this and it's like, it's mostly defense. I know they kind of went away from that a little bit later on in the draft, but a lot of the previous drafts, it's been, they like drafting O-line, which shows because their O-line's a real strength of the team, and they like drafting defense, which isn't. So I don't quite know what's going on with the scouts in there, but yeah, I like that pick. Ian Book in the fourth round, that was an interesting one. He was all over people's boards. I think he was largely seen as a mid-round pick. I saw some have him in the second, some have him in the third, some have him in the fourth, and some have him as low as the seventh. So I don't think there was a real consensus on how good this guy was. I will say that if I was trusting one coach in the NFL beyond my team's coach, probably, I might regret saying that if Trey Lance busts out, but if I was trusting one coach in the NFL to pick a quarterback, I think I'd choose Sean Payton, because I think even if he doesn't choose the most talented QB, I think he'll get something out of them, which is going to bring me on to a later point. But yeah, Ian Book, he ain't going to be a day one starter. He's probably not. He may never be a starter. He may just be a good backup. But I like what they've done bringing him in. I think it's somebody that Payton can work with, see if he can get something out of. The other guys he's got there, we'll talk about that in a sec, but there's some interesting contract situations there between Hill and Winston. So I can see why he's sort of trying to plan for the future. And I kind of believe in the philosophy that if you draft a QB every year, you can develop a backup, or you can develop somebody that may become a starter. And it does save you some money, because even backup QBs now are going for a lot of money. People like Mariota to the Raiders, people like Glennon back in the day. These are prime positions. And also, it's often said that there's 32 franchises and about 32 good quarterbacks, but you give yourself a hell of a lot more chance if you're spending time to develop some mid-round guys that have got some talent. The slightly interesting pick, I don't know how much impact he'll have in year one, because they've a pretty crowded receiver room. He may not even make the roster, but I liked a lot of what I saw of his tape, was the Kawan Baker, the receiver out of South Alabama. He's gone in the 7th because he plays for South Alabama. His measurables are good. His tape's pretty good. And they have a habit of finding these players, the Saints, kind of late in drafts from smaller schools. I think back to Marquise Colston out of Hofstra. I mean, who the hell gets drafted out of Hofstra? That's such a rare thing. South Alabama probably have more players drafted than I might realize, but it's still not a prestigious school. It's a small school guy. I don't know. I'd be interested to see if he makes the roster. I think he's got some explosiveness to him, and I know Payton likes that in his receivers. Overall, looking at the roster, I mean, I already said some of the weaknesses. Most of it's defense. The linebacker room isn't brilliant. The DB room is okay. I think they're hoping for Adebo to come in and play pretty well from the off. But there's a lot of experience back there as well. People like Malcolm Jenkins that have played a number of years in the league. So there's some savvy there, and I think they'll be good enough. I think that's, we talked about the Panthers defense earlier. If your offense is good enough, if you can get it into the mid-range on defense, if you're not a complete dumpster fire, you'll be fine. I think that's it. And I think the Saints have traditionally been quite good at that. Of course, the issue that they're going to have this year, and the big issue for me, they're always contenders while Sean Payton is in the head coaching chair, because he's that good a coach. I think he can coach 5 wins a year, no matter what his squad is. Now, the rest is dependent on how good his team is. The issue I have, and it will be no surprise to anybody that's ever heard me talk about, quarterbacks in general, or specifically these ones, is the quarterback room. I mean, Ian Book we talked about. Trevor Seaman Trevor Seaman? That can't be right. I don't know if I can pronounce that name, but he's a lifetime backup. I imagine he might make the roster, but then you've got Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston.
Yeah, come on.
It's a hell of a drop no matter what you think of Winston or Taysom Hill, it's a massive drop from Drew Brees. It's a monumental drop from Drew Brees.
That's fair.
Drew Brees has been at the top of his game for I don't even know how many years. Going back to the Chargers days, it's probably about 15 years. And the other thing is he identifies so clearly with New Orleans. He has been the face of that franchise. He was the first big name to go there post Katrina, helped them rebuild, and arguably took them to a Super Bowl. It's a big drop off. There has to be a decision who starts there. I think there's a tendency to go with Winston because he's the pro-style QB. I don't know if that's the right way to go. I will be interested to see what they do there, and I'll get you guys' views on that in a second. But I'll be interested to see what they do there, because you could say that that Hill can stay as a gadget player and they'll still get some good stuff out of him. Taysom Hill is a tremendous athlete. Like, I love watching him play. He has some exciting plays. Can he be an every down quarterback? Can he start every game? I don't know. They tried it last year. He did okay. He's got the right coach if they want to turn him into that type of player, but I don't know how much of that he's got in him. I enjoy his contract. I enjoy the Saints' efforts to have an elastic salary cap every year. I think they might be one of the best cap management teams in sports with how they keep getting away with it. They've been consistently over the cap for years, but seem to find a way out of it. Winston is still the guy that was at Tampa for me. I think he will benefit from being coached by Peyton. I think he will improve. I don't think he'll improve enough. Unfortunately, at this point, Winston is never going to be that franchise quarterback type. He had a couple of good years in Tampa, and then I don't really know what happened to his game. He was still throwing touchdowns, but he seemed to be making more and more errors. And unfortunately, that's outweighed his good points now. If Peyton can coach the errors out of him, yeah, maybe there's something there, but it's quite a high-risk offense. So I'm not seeing that. I think he'll go with Winston because I think he'll see the talent that obviously is there. I don't think I've ever said he's an untalented player. He was a number one pick for a reason, and things like that. But he'll look at him, he'll see the arm talent, and he'll see the sort of like the exciting side of Winston and think, yeah, I can get 10 wins out of that. How the Saints season goes will depend on if he's right about that, ultimately. Or what he does if he starts Taysom Hill, how good a quarterback can he make Taysom Hill? We know he's a good athlete. How good a quarterback can he make him? And whatever the answer is to either of those questions is going to determine where they are. They could take a big fall this year because the Panthers are coming up. The Falcons, we think, are potentially, if they get things in the right place, are a 8-9 win team probably. The Panthers are coming up. They did okay last year anyway, and the Bucs are the Bucs. So they need to get out of the gate hot, really. And if there's one coach I think can do it, it's Sean Payton. I think my admiration for him is probably coming through quite a bit of what I'm saying. As a coach, as a tactician, as a game manager, as a play caller, I think he's one of the best in the league. And that's the only reason, really, I could even make a case for them being up there. But it will be one of those. We'll see them in the first 2-3 weeks, and we'll see where they're at. But it's all QB. It's all QB. We've talked about a few teams like that, but in the Saints' case, it's 100% true. It is purely based on what happens at QB. I don't know what you guys think about that. I know we've got a massive Jameis Winston fan in, but I'll throw to Mark first because I know he has some thoughts on the Saints QB situation. So give me it. Let's see what you think.
It's just an interesting one because pretty much every single position in the NFL is situational, apart from quarterback. And Sean Payton is pretty imaginative and a pretty boundary-pushing offensive coordinator and head coach. He's an offensive coordinator there. Let's face it. He's calling offense and he's a head coach. Could we see a situational quarterback situation here where we go, okay, between the 20s, up until the red zone, we're going to go with Jameis Winston primarily or Ian Book. He doesn't turn the ball over Ian Book. He doesn't throw many touchdowns, but he was the winningest quarterback at Notre Dame over their history. Quarterback with the most amount of wins in their history. Very conservative with the ball. I think last year he had 14 TDs or 15 TDs and 3 interceptions is what I've got written down on my pad here. Will they go, right, okay, Book or Jameis Winston, we're going to run you up until the red zone. And then in the red zone, we're going to bring in Taysom Hill. Is this going to be... I wouldn't put it past Sean Payton to go, I'm going to be the first head coach that makes quarterback a situational position. You know what I mean? And we'll use 3 of them on a drive if we need to. You know what I mean? Depending on what situation we're in. If we're chasing the game, we'll put it in the hands of Jameis Winston. If we're controlling the game, we'll put it in the hands of Ian Book. And if we're in the red zone, we're going to give it to Taysom Hill. Is it beyond the realms of possibility?
No, definitely not. Peyton has always been quite innovative, and I think he's got the ego to think he could do that as well. It would certainly be an unusual thing. It'd be interesting to see what some other teams do that are in similar situations. I can think of one very close to my heart with a very good athlete. and probably a between the 20s quarterback. Be interested to see if that did take off. We know the NFL likes to copy.
It's a copycat league.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to see if it did take off. Would other teams do it?
Yeah.
Bones, I know you're a massive fan of Taysom Hill. So
call me Urban Meyer because I love a gadget player. Like, I do just like Taysom Hill. I think Mark's point is a really good one, though. I think most of Taysom Hill's snaps do come in the red zone. Like, he is predominantly a red zone usage player. Like, he played starter a few games. He played from like in between the 20s a few games, and he does all right. Like, he does what he does. Like, it's Taysom Hill. He plays like 5 different positions on offense, like half the time. Like, the guy's unbelievable. I just love him. I wish he played for us. I just love watching him play. Like, anytime he lines up, and I think the thing that I love about that kind of player, and it's the mind game, isn't it? It's the mind game that Sean Payton's playing when he puts Taysom Hill on the field, and you're trying to decide what defense you're going to send to match up with that. And you're like, well, is Hill in at running back? Is Hill in at quarterback? Is Hill in at, as a receiver? Where the hell is Hill playing? What is this guy doing? And I think the downside of him potentially being the starter would be you would lose that. Like, you would lose that unpredictability. Like, you would lose that mix-up potential. Like, and I don't think Sean Payton will want to lose that as much as I would love to see Hill start, because he is such a good player. Like, well, at least I think he is personally. I just really like him. But I don't know if I think he'll still be what he has been, and that's predominantly red zone usage. And he excels there. He does well there. Like, yeah, all right. Last year, four touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Classic Jameis Winston lineup of 50-50. But no, the guy, he's one of the few players that gets throwing, rushing, and receiving stats every single year. Like, how many players actually get that? Like, yeah, I just like to see him play, and I hope he's still got a prominent role, whatever it is, and I think he will.
I think you make a really good point there, though, as well. Like, what's the trade-off between, okay, I lose the element of surprise from Taysom Hill because I'm no longer playing him as a gadget player, but does he gain me something at quarterback? Is the gain at quarterback enough that you would be willing to give that up? It's an interesting point. I think I won't know what to think of the Saints until week 1. I think that's kind of where I am at the minute. I look at the roster. I think it's a good one, but then I also go, there's too many things I have to question about it. There's too many things I go, I wonder what they're going to do there, or I wonder who they're going to play here, or whatever. But yeah, it'd be an interesting one. There'll certainly be, again, it's another fun to watch team because I have no idea what they're going to come out with on offense. So I look forward to that. Jamie,
he did go 3-1 as a starter. Sorry, he did go 3-1 as a starter when Brees went down last year as well.
He did,
he did. The decision. He did have a good year.
He did, and the game planned around him quite well. I thought they put him in the best position to succeed, and that is what Peyton does. That's the way he is. All right, Jamie, I know you don't like Sean Payton. I know you're an avowed Jameis Winston fan, so go on. Let's see what you got to say.
I just like going off that bit where Bones said Taysom Hill had a good season. So, Taysom Hill last season was second only behind Dan Jones and Derek Carr for the most fumbles in the whole season. He had the most fumbles and lost fumbles whilst rushing all season.
The only year that's ever happened. He had 0 fumbles the year before and 1 fumble the year before that. You're being very specific
because
with
the
the statistics you pick out here.
But you're saying because he was a starter and he's actually playing. So there you go. Winston, on the other hand, has a 5,000-yard season behind him when he was a starter. He had 1 pass, 1 throw, one interception. So I'm used to saying that. One touchdown. Right. 1 touchdown. Granted, Saints didn't win the game because he went on and beat them, but Jameis Winston did have a throwing touchdown against the Buccaneers in the playoffs. 1 throw, one touchdown, 100% record right there. Just saying. I agree with Mark though. I think Winston would be most of the outfield and maybe bring Taysom Hill in with the red zone. Why not? Or you had Jameis Winston play behind Drew Brees for a year and then he could come out and maybe he's fixed those errors in his game. Don't forget, like, we did go to the playoffs when he came out. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He has the ability there. I think he's a phenomenal player. He's entertaining to watch, whether it's going to be a win or a loss. You just love to watch because you never know what's going to happen with him. You say Taysom Hill's the most exciting player. Jameis Winston's the most exciting player because you don't know. He could throw a 500-yard game with 7 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, and it'd be the most beautiful thing in the world.
Jamie, most of these pods, I pick a bet for players, like for fans to get behind.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bet for you to get behind. Jameis Winston, comeback player of the year, 20-1.
I've already got it on.
You've already got it on?
I probably will. I mean, I love him. I think like I don't want them to do well because obviously I want the Bucs to go and win it all. But I want him to do well. I've loved him since we drafted him in. He's been entertaining to watch. He's a nice guy. Like, I follow him on Instagram, on Hard Knocks, Buccaneers and stuff. He is a great guy. I love him. He's entertaining to watch. And through the whole dire years that we had as a Bucs fan, we played entertaining. Like, we played entertaining football. It was never boring when we lost. So I didn't mind. You know, it gets a little bit frustrating when he's throwing it to the other guys, but you know.
I came up with that bet just for you. I thought I want to get Jameis Winston a mention. And you know, say if he does start for the Saints, that's not a bad bet, that, you know, Jameis Winston for comeback player of the year. Maybe he has learned something. Maybe he has smartened up. Maybe he does do well with the Saints and they do win that division again. 20-1? Is it? You could put a 10 on worse corners, couldn't you?
And I've got a bet for you. First throw interception. I love him. Like, for me, it's a no-brainer. Like, Taysom Hill isn't good enough to be a starting quarterback. Like you say, he can go out and do other stuff. Fair enough. He was free. Shall we look? What games did he play as a 3-1 as a starter? Who did he play against? Probably the Jets. I don't know. Probably the Jaguars. But Winston, like I said, he's done it before. He's been to the playoffs. Granted, we didn't win when we went to the playoffs. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He is an entertaining. He's got a great arm on him. He's great on the scramble as well. Like, he can run. And he's going to be definitely something that Sean Payton can look at developing further. When he did that touchdown throw against the Buccaneers, it was a complete trick play. Nobody expected what he was going to do because that's what he can do. He is an entertaining player to watch. And I wish him well in the future, but not too well. But I love you, Winston.
Yeah, I mean, he was number 1 pick for a reason. We could say that of Jamarcus Russell, but at least we've seen something with Jameis Winston. So that he's got some ability there. You know, so
how many quarterbacks has thrown over 5,000 yards in a single
season? Only one. 50 and 50, 5,000 yards. Is that what he had that year?
What was that? Sorry.
What was his stats that year? 5,000 yards and how many touchdowns and how many interceptions was it?
It was like 35 touchdowns and 30 interceptions or something like that.
I remember he went 30 and 30, didn't he? And 5,000 yards. It's incredible. Take away the interceptions and it's incredible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, let's bring it up now. Winston 2019 stats. 5,109 yards. I mean,
incredible.
Yeah, he's a great player, and like I said, as a Buccaneers fan,
yeah. I mean, come on, we're pushing the boundaries of great here, like, aren't we? A great player.
Colourblind player, perhaps. Can't tell uniforms apart, can he? Colourblind.
Was there a point in that season where they got him tested for an eyesight issue because he was throwing that many?
During, obviously, when his contract ran out, he did have eye surgery.
Yeah, he had. Was it laser eye surgery he had or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to get the benefits of that now. Like, unless, obviously, when it does come down to the Saints and the Bucs and Jameis Winston is starting and he decides that, Mike Evans is still on the team, but Mike Evans is playing defense for some reason, decides to throw it at him. Who knows?
Yeah, we're going to have to start wrapping this up. We've been on here nearly 2 hours.
I know.
It's getting into Jameis Winston loving now, like, you know. When I started hearing the phrase Jameis Winston's a great player, I start thinking we need to wrap this up. You know what I mean?
I do agree, though. I think it is something to look at that maybe he could be a shout-in for comeback player of the year.
I think he could be.
Nobody else has nearly died or had the legs amputated this season. Maybe Joe Burrow, but that's the only real contention, isn't it? You've got Joe Burrow as his only contention to be comeback player of the year. So why not Winston? If they go 16-0 and Winston throws over 5,000 yards, Bones, you will eat your words, much like he will eat those dubs.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, I still don't get that. It's like he looked at himself and thought, how can I make myself look a bigger tit? Anyway, I'll try and round this dying embers of a show off now with the division prediction. I'm struggling here. I think based on what we've said, we've probably got the Bucs winning the division, right?
And the rest wide open.
Yeah, it's a real struggle after that.
Falcons number 2, I'm telling you. Falcons number 2.
I think the Saints, Mickey Loomis has done a magician's trick when they were in such cap hell and he brought back enough pieces to think that the Saints are still going to be number 2 in this division.
I'm kind of on board with that. I just think it depends on the QB, doesn't it? I think that's my only real concern.
I think that's why I personally said the Falcons at 2 is because I think the Saints and the Panthers, the QB question mark is too big. Whereas Matt Ryan's not a question mark. Matt Ryan is an MVP caliber quarterback.
That's a good point. But I just
with the unicorn.
Let's lock that in. Let's go on there. Let's shock the world. Oh, but I can't put the Panthers bottom of these.
I'm going to say that's where it gets difficult because somebody has to finish bottom as well. It's not just who finishes second.
True.
It's really difficult to predict this division. I mean, I've got the Bucs as winning it, and the other 3, I'm like, well, what are the Saints going to look like without Brees? How good are the Panthers going to be in a second year of Joe Brady and Matt Rule and arguably an upgrade of Teddy Bridgewater? How bad were the Falcons under Dan Quinn, and was it Dan Quinn's fault? And we're going to, I don't know how to predict the next 3. The only thing I'm comfortable with is the Bucs are going to win the division. Yeah. And I don't know who's going to come. The 3, I really can't do it.
I think picking a last is the hardest part, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I'm gonna actually speak out against my own statements. I'm gonna put the Saints bottom.
Wow. Well, there is a bet. The Saints going from top to bottom. That's a bet.
Because if they don't have a QB, I really don't think their defense is good enough to carry them.
They're going to have the best QB.
Alvin Kamara, Alvin Kamara, Lattimore, got Cameron Jordan. They've got some players there, though, John.
They have. It's a tough one, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of we think the other 2 teams will be improved. See, the thing is, we just put the Falcons second. They were the only other team I considered putting bottom because I don't know how good they actually are. And I think they're a complete mystery.
Can we not just break our own rule and go Tampa Bay top? Question mark, question mark, second, third, and fourth.
We might as well at this point.
This is the thing, though. Not a lot of people see. This is one of the most entertaining divisions because all of them are really good teams. Like I said, all of them have been to the Super Bowl in the last 10 years, and anybody could win that division. Well,
no, anybody couldn't win that division. Anybody could lose that division right now, which makes it a different ballgame.
This ain't the NFC West.
The NFC West is going to be our longest episode because it'll be an hour of me and Jordan fighting over who's won.
I've got them, you know what I mean? I'd have to do a whole show on the Raiders alone, you know what I mean?
I can't wait.
No, I can't wait for that. I'm not. To be honest, I'm probably not even going to be on camera on that episode. I'm just going to go right. We're going to go to the Raiders with Mark, and then I'm just going to turn up. No, right. So I have got the Bucs number 1. I'm doing it for Twitter, obviously, just to see if we get. I am tempted to put the Saints bottom because I think we'll get a bunch of outraged people in the mentions. I like that.
Go on, stick it up.
Go on.
Bucks question more. But go on. You've done it, John. It's on the screen now. Put it on Twitter.
It's official for the world to see.
Or 5 followers.
I said I wouldn't be surprised if at least 2, maybe 3 of those teams are winning seasons.
Yeah. I think we'll see 2 wildcard teams in this division.
Yeah, I think this is a really strong division for me.
I think we'll see 2 teams in the playoffs on this division. So you're not 2 wildcard teams. I think we'll see 2 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, I could see that 100%.
I'm just having a look as well, because like some of the teams that we're playing, I think we are playing the AFC. You've got Patriots, Jets, and Jaguars. We're playing that division mainly this year.
Yeah.
So again, like you think that division's pretty poor. Like if you count Jaguars and Jets, if they're not going to turn up, and then you've got the Patriots as well, who might not even turn up. This division could do really, really well.
I really like the Panthers' schedule. They've got the Texans, they've got the Jets, they've got the Eagles. You know what I mean? I like those games. And I'm backing Panthers to win those games. Then I guess it's going to boil down to in division. Who's going to win those division matchups? You know what I mean?
Last year, that's what broke the tie last year between the Saints and the Bucks. It's definitely going to be those interdivisional games. So yeah, we're sticking with that. It's out on Twitter now. So
now it's done.
It's too late. We've done it.
Abuse from New Orleans, I reckon. But well, I don't know. It's a tough one. You could feasibly make an argument for almost any combination really after the Bucks, I think. But yeah, another episode in the books. Where are we going next week?
The AFC West.
AFC West. Oh yes.
It's time.
Going to cover the AFC West, and
fans, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, so we know Mark is doing the Raiders. I can't remember who else is doing what else, but Mark is definitely doing the Raiders.
I don't think we
be here next week. It may be 1.5 hours of Mark just talking about the Raiders. We don't know. We don't plan this, by the way. We do some research. But we don't plan it.
It's going to be like a special 3-hour special, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to throw it out to Mark, and who knows what could happen. We already had last week when he ranted about Tim Tebow, which we weren't expecting. So I mean, that wasn't even
that
his
was
team.
Fun, though. That was really fun.
So yeah, tune in next week for the AFC West. I'm quite looking forward to it myself, to be honest. I think Jordan will be back with us next week and possibly hosting, but we will discuss that internally. But yeah, in the meantime, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @ThirdShortPod, and we'll see you next week, guys. Have a good one.
Arrivederci.